Hi, this is Russ Anderson. In this tutorial, I'm going to talk about how you can read RED movie files in SynthEyes and do it as efficiently as possible using the different features of SynthEyes and the RED SDK. So there are a bunch of details between the two of them to understand. So that's what this is about. Now, I've got open here a section of the preferences that is devoted just to the RED and the RED GPU decoding portion. So you'll see that there are a bunch of different settings here. I'll talk about some of them. And the most important one that we'll start out with is what devices to use. And that can range from, a RED Rocket or OpenCL or CUDA processing, or down to none, which means just to use the software decoder. And that is useful, if you're running just on a machine that doesn't have a suitable GPU card, something with integrated graphics, say. But it's also necessary if the clip uses HDRX, which the RED GPU library doesn't support. So let's just start out with the software processing. So I'm going to click OK there. And there are a couple settings in SynthEyes that you should adjust for using that software library to maintain good performance. Now, I would adjust this read one frame at a time, except that the RED library, the software library, doesn't do that anyway. It doesn't even bother to look at this. So essentially, it's always going to be reading one frame at a time in the software version, no matter what. And we do want to turn off this enable prefetch for using the software library. And the reason for that is that, as you'll see, it takes the software library a fairly long time to decode each frame. So if you've got a whole bunch of frames trying to be decoded all at once, then it can take a while when you want to stop for all those things to finish up. So it kind of reduces responsiveness. So it's a good idea to turn that off. Then we can go and open a file up here. Here, I think we're actually waiting for our disk drive to spin up. Okay, so now here we go. We've got the file. This is going to be the 4.5K file that we're looking at, and we'll just click the OK and let it run through. And you'll see because the prefetch is off, it's not starting to read at all. So I start to play, and you can see it proceeds through. You look down here at the bottom, it's running somewhere in the 1.5 to 2 frames a second to read that file using the software decoder. And unfortunately, it just uses one CPU to do that. That's just a limitation of the RED library that I can't do anything about, unfortunately. So that's kind of exciting. So let's go, and now we're going to start using the GPU library instead. So we're going to go back, and we'll just set that to any type and click OK. And again, remember what I said, that we need to restart after these kind of changes because that data isn't being looked at, except the very first time that a RED file gets open. So with the software, with the GPU library is going to get used. We don't need that on. We do want the enable prefetch on, so we're actually good there. And now let's go and open up our shot. And if you look down at the bottom left, you'll see a little line that says using one CUDA GPU for RED decoding. And that's letting you know exactly what's happened. That's your feedback. You'll see later that'll disappear. So we do have that going. Now when I hit OK, now you start seeing how it's just chewing through that file and a whole lot better. And so that's that's a result of using, all the CPUs, all the GPUs more. This is just a more modern and advanced version that RED has provided and that SynthEyes now supports. So obviously that's a whole lot cheerier to utilize because it is so much faster. And I think if you time that out, it's something like 10 times faster roughly than doing it one frame at a time. So details on this, you do have to have a decent GPU, decent video card to be able to do that. There's not any kind of real specification I'm aware of what's needed from RED as far as to do that. It needs to support the OpenCL or CUDA libraries that you see listed here as far as the types. Then there are various versions of those. But the bottom line is really you can try it and see what happens. General figure, you do want to be looking at something with 1 gigabyte or more of RAM in the video card most likely. Because all this does require a whole bunch of memory to do, not just in the video card but in your CPU itself, just because you have a whole bunch of frames of video flying around all being worked on at the same time. And obviously you got 4K, 6K frames of data flying around. Those add up really quickly. And there are multiple copies of each of them. So you do need a bunch of memory. The GPU decoder does not decode HDRX, the high dynamic range files. That's just a limitation of the GPU decoder. That'll fall back and use the software reader automatically. But if it does that, then you're going to want to go and adjust that to enable prefetch settings so that it maintains responsiveness nicely. You'll notice that there are a bunch of different options here. If you have a RED Rocket installed, basically that's going to get used first. The OpenCL second, the CUDA third, I think is the particular order. And you can select any of these individually if you want to use just one of those and try it and see how the performance goes. Now you might have a couple of video cards in your machine, especially if you have those Mac Pros, 2 video cards. The system by default is going to go and use all of those if it can. Now, not entirely obvious how well that works, whether they all step on each other's toes as they do that, whether you want to have something else going on in one of the GPUs. But you have the way to control exactly which of the different GPUs gets used. And exactly which one is the first and which is the second, hard to say. But you got a bunch of different controls to say, to play with there. Then there are also these other technical controls from RED. I have the descriptions that I got from them, listed here in the tooltips and of course in the manual some. They're pretty much a shot in the dark as far as I'm concerned. Your guess is as good as mine. If you do want to try to play with them to see if that has some effect on the performance, just remember that you do need to restart SynthEyes for them to have an effect. So hopefully this gives you an idea of what you can do and how this runs along quite a lot faster. And other details, maybe you can check out the manual. There's the section reading RED R3D files in the manual. Thanks a lot.